Hello and welcome everybody to another session of Three Things Thursday, and I'm on my own today. Today we're talking about, I can't believe it's already September, and our kids have been in school. Some of our kids have been in school almost a month. So we thought we'll talk, the month of September, we'll talk about knowing your school system, knowing your school district, and also knowing, at the state level, the people involved specifically for special education. So today our topic is know your school team, and we'll talk about who they are, why do you need to know who they are, and how can you find out where can you get information. So the first thing I want to talk about is who. So there are lots of different people that are involved with our children in school. So, those of you who have IEPs or your children have IEPs or 504s, not just know who the teacher is, but also it's important to know if your child is getting any related services, who are the therapists who are part of your IEP team. Most often at your IEP meeting, a district liaison person will be there, somebody who oversees special education for that school or that district will also be there. So who is that district person? That's important to know because many times that district person has authority to make decisions. Knowing who that is important. Many of your IEPs might have transportation in there. So knowing who is the transportation supervisor, who is the bus driver, who is the aide, who is their supervisor, knowing that information is important. Or if your child has a behavior intervention plan, then knowing who is the behavior specialist. If your child is undergoing a functional behavior analysis, then who is the FBA, the person who's doing the FBA, or your case manager. So knowing who these people are, having their names and contact information is really important. And then other school staff, they might, knowing who the principal is, the assistant principal. Most often in many schools, the assistant principal is the one who might be in charge of discipline issues. So knowing who that is. Even your front desk, as you drop off and pick up your child, knowing the name of the person in the front desk if you need to contact them for something. If your child is attending after school care, so making sure that you know more than just one person at the school and just not your teacher and the other people is also important. And then you also might want to, know who the director of special education is for your district, or if there is, in larger districts, there are area supervisors, or the transition coordinator. So an example is, last year, my son is 18 years old, and I wanted to find out a little more about what transition options are available to him. So this was not an IEP meeting. I just looked up who the transition coordinator was, and I called the person and I said, can I meet? And she was like, sure. And we had a great meeting. We had a 1-hour Zoom meeting where I was able to ask her all these transition questions, and I discovered all these different programs that my son's school system offers for children who are transitioning out of high school. And so that was a really, a good way for me to get information. So the same thing, you can, whether it's your speech therapist at the school, outside of the IEP meeting, you can call them, if you're trying to brainstorm some ideas, or if you want to know what other things are available in the school, knowing who to contact is important outside of your IEP team. So this is just a list of people. There might be more people that you need to keep in, you need to know who is in your school. And then the why, why do you need to know all these people? What makes it important? So knowing more about your district or knowing more about your school system, it'll definitely help you be a better advocate for your child. When we talk about policies and procedures, most of our children may be receiving special education services, or they might have a 504 plan, but they're still governed by the other rules that the school has. So the school might have rules about attendance, might have rules about dress code, so our children are still bound by those rules that are there. And so there are lots of policies and procedures that are there at the school. So knowing what those policies and procedures are, getting involved in contributing to the, if the school system is asking for input from parents, looking to see where you can get involved. Lots of schools have, there are advisory councils, so finding out if there's an advisory council or like a PTA or a transition council. There are lots of these different advisory boards that exist. So getting to know, being on these boards will help you drive policy, and help you influence the policy for your school system. The other place where it's important to know your school district, beyond just knowing who it is and the names of the people, is also, having some insight on the general education curriculum. So for many of us, our child might be in a self-contained classroom. We're totally focused on the child's IEP, and that's all we're kind of looking at. But also knowing what's happening in the general education classroom. How is that curriculum being provided to the students? And then there might be projects. So, a third grade teacher might have this really awesome project that she's working on with the children in her class, part of the curriculum. And it might be an opportunity for your child to participate in that project. It might be an opportunity to have some meaningful inclusion. So really knowing what's going on in the general education classrooms, or the general education curriculum, how it's being implemented. Are there any opportunities for your child to have some meaningful inclusive opportunities with other students without disabilities. So knowing what the general education curriculum is also important. And if you know, those of you who have IEPs will know that in your IEP meeting, usually there is a general education educator in there. And so don't feel like that's the only time you can ask. You can always call another general education educator in your school and say, can you talk to me about what's happening, what kind of projects you have in your class, and you can have a conversation. The other, other reason why you need to know your school system is, our students are getting all these various types of testing. There's school-wide testing that happens. This is beyond the IEPs, and beyond the end of the course. There are other types of school testings that might be happening. There are screenings that are happening. District-wide screenings might be happening. So, knowing what those screenings are, why are they doing it? What are the results of those testing, district-wide, school-wide, where can you find that data? Where can you find that information? So really, that will really give you a good picture of, of your school system, of your school, of the district as a whole. So really knowing a little more than just your child's IEP and their IEP meeting, getting involved in some of these advisory councils can definitely help you get a better picture of what's happening and be more informed. And that will definitely lead to being able to advocate for your child. And the next thing we want to talk about is where. So where can you find this information? Like you need to contact somebody, but who do you contact? So I think the easiest way to do this is you just do a Google search and you put the name of the school system. And if you're looking for somebody in special education, then you just type like Fulton County Special Education. And the Fulton County Special Education page will pop up. So let's look at an example. Sorry, I'm just trying to, 1 second. I did have everything set up, but I can't find it right now. So let me just, I was trying to find you a school system, but if you put in special education Fulton County, the special education page will pop up. And so there you'll find contact information for special education director, or at least a phone number to call the special education department. And so you can call that phone number and then find out who is your supervisor. And also your school. So if you want to know who is in your school and you want to find out contact information for your school, you can go to your school's website. All schools, whether it's a large system or small system, they have websites that you can go to. And usually there'll be a school staff, a link to the staff contact information. So you can click on that link and find all the people that you would need to connect with. So that's one resource where you can go to find information. So the last one that I wanted to talk about is also you can subscribe. Most schools or school districts have newsletters. That is another place where you can subscribe to the newsletter, read their newsletter. I get my son's, I get both the district information as well as my son's school has a newsletter. And so it comes in my email. And that's a good way to know what's going on in the school, what's going on district-wide. It keeps you informed of the other things that are happening. So these are just some really quick tips that we wanted to share with you about getting to know your school system and also getting to know your school district, because the more we know and the more we're connected, the better outcomes we're going to have for our children. So again, next week, we have Sharon Jones from Georgia Department of Education. She's a family engagement specialist, and she's going to talk about the special education helpline. I hope you all join us in this series of knowing your school district. And again, like always, if you need any information, you can always call us at the number on the slide, or you can always go to our website and contact us that way. So thank you again for joining us on another session of Three Things Thursday. And I hope to see all of you next week. Thanks.